Inventing Divine Intervention, written and performed by Alexander Martin. Part 2. If you have not yet listened to Part 1, please find a link to it in the description below. Takezaki Suenaga knew that he was ruggedly handsome. He knew that he was wise as the owl, inventive as the otter, noble as the dragon, and silent as the snake. He did not know that snakes make noise, but that is less relevant to this tale. Above all else, he knew that he was a mighty warrior, possibly the mightiest of warriors to ever have graced the face of the earth. He had defeated not one, but two demigods in single combat in order to claim his rightful mantle as Grand Field Marshal General, Gokin to Shonikage and servant of the Emperor of Japan. Now he was going into battle. Here he would prove to everyone just how exceptional and powerful he was. He would crush his foes beneath his waraji. He would rip out their spines and put them back in upside down. He would cut them from nose to navel with his tachi. He would smite them with his newly acquired divine powers. Having set up camp past Hakata, Suenaga and his men rode out, passing the torii of Sumiyoshi Jinja. At the top of the hill overlooking the battle, they came across a man in royal purple with a cape red as blood, seated upon a dappled grey horse. Behind him marched 100 mounted fighting men, all fresh from the fight, their armor dented and chewed, their quivers empty of arrows. Suenaga greeted the man atop the horse. He was most assuredly their general, since he was flanked by 2 retainers carrying enemy heads upon the naginata. This sight pleased Suenaga, and he whispered to his own captains how he wished for them to carry heads on pikes when he returned from the field. "Who passes here looking so brave?" Suenaga called ahead to the approaching general. "I am Kikuchi Jiro Takefusa of Higo province. Who are you?" the man replied, and boisterously raised his bow over his head, shouting, "Higo! Higo! Higo!" until all of the men at his back had taken up the chant. Suenaga grinned back at Takefusa with unconcealed glee. "I am Takezaki Suenaga of the same province. Watch me attack!" Suenaga commanded. At this, he turned his horse abruptly and kicked sharply with his heels to goad it into a hard gallop. Drawing his bow over his head, he twirled it about before setting it back under his arm and leaning into his horse's charge, pointing his arrow like a sword before him and raising a fearsome war cry to buff his men with courage, increasing their strength and constitution by 50. As his men gathered round him, Suenaga surged forward, knocking his arrow and aiming between the beats of his horse's hooves, pounding the dirt below into submission. With a final whoop, Suenaga loosed his arrow. As it would be later told, that single arrow whistled through the air and struck a Mongol cavalryman, blasting him from his horse with the force of a lightning bolt. With such force did it strike him that it applied stun and fear debuffs to the 3 troops which were in the impact area of effect. The rank behind them faltered at seeing such a powerful shot. Moments later, a hail of arrows rained down upon the Zogodo, felling man and beast alike. Even those not struck with arrows were thrown to the ground as the ranks before them fell, tripping their galloping steeds. As he approached the enemy lines and came into range, Suenaga was still well ahead of the rest of his men. So far ahead was he that he became an easy target for the Mongol archers. Yet Suenaga was not cowed by their feeble bows and the pitiful twigs that they called arrows. He scoffed as their arrows whisked toward him, twirling his bow before him to block any arrows that would have found his flesh. His horse was not so fortunate as he was struck multiple times in the abdomen and flanks. She let out a pained whinny and pitched forwards, hurling Suenaga into the air. Suenaga's men gaped in horror at the sight of their general being forcibly dismounted and landing heavily upon the ground. Their courage was destroyed but a moment later, as a terrifying demonic roar erupted from the spot where their leader had just fallen. Rising from the earth was the veritable image of Ashura. Unholy rage radiated from his form as he hurled sparking orbs of earth ahead into the enemy ranks. Upon impact, the orbs bloomed into roses of crimson fire, spattering dirt and wood and flesh in every direction. The Mongol lines broke. Pandemonium reigned in their camp as the men of Higo descended upon them, laying into them with bow and spear and an insatiable thirst for vengeance. They would avenge their Grand Field Marshal General if it was the last thing they did. But General Suenaga needed no one to avenge him. He would do that himself. Taking up his bow and his quiver, Suenaga marched forward, spewing a foul scarlet miasma before him to choke out any doctor that dared impede his slog towards his goal. "Let not a man among them escape," the Shade commanded. "Let every man from Higo take for himself the head of an enemy he has slain, and bring it to me this night as proof of his service in this battle, so that he may be rewarded in accordance with his meritorious deeds." The men of Higo heard the words of their leader and lifted up their voices with a raucous cheer before carving up trophies from their kills to display when the time came to tally their deeds in battle. So it continued, battle after battle, until Suenaga reached the coast. From the beachhead, the men of Higo and the Suenaga's proud command rained arrows upon the landing craft like a summer storm. As they fought one day, sharp winds rose fiercely from the northeast, whipping the Zokuto's sails and blowing the Higo men's arrows hither and yon. Sensing the impending typhoon, Suenaga decided that this was his chance to prove his divine powers. This was his moment, and he would not allow it to pass him by. Realizing that neither faction's archers would be able to hit an ox more than 5 paces in front of them, with the wind as it was, he should have no fear of projectiles for the time being. Marching to the forefront of his troops' lines, he dug deep within himself for the memory he had crafted of his battle with Fujin and Raijin. Lifting off his helmet and clasping his heavy sharkskin armor, left Suenaga in the white linen kimono and hakama set, pristine priestly raiment, which decreases defense, physical resist, and durability by 70%, 45%, and 23% respectively, but raised his casting range, accuracy, magic damage, and charisma by 100%, 5%, 330%, and 450%. Drawing forth the lightning-scorched kimono he had worn to Kagesuke's meeting where he had been declared Grand Field Marshal General from his pack, he stood fully on the bulwarks and hoisted the cloth high over his head. Suenaga slowly waved the cloth in a circle with his right hand, allowing it to whip in the wind before bringing it down and tearing a piece to let loose with his left hand. He did this twice before he began to chant as well, allowing his face to writhe and contort, such that even the Mongols in their ships should be able to see the fury of his countenance. The winds increased their speed and ferocity, churning the sea into a roiling froth and unburdening the smaller craft of their human cargo. Suenaga chanted louder and gesticulated more and more wildly, as if stirring the sky like a pot of soup. Having long since given up on using their bows, the men of Higo raised their fists in the air and attempted to mimic the incoherent syllables Suenaga continued to utter until a bright flash split the clouds overhead. With that, Suenaga released the last tatters of his cloak and brought his fist down to the earth at his feet like he had done before the assembly in Higo. With that, he turned to his men and nodded at them as the mighty kamikaze took its course to thoroughly wreck the Mongol fleet upon the rocks stretching out in the bay. By the time that the winds and waves had stilled, little remained of the once mighty Mongol armada. Cracked hulls and tattered sails could be seen limping away under the unsteady hands of shaken sailors. The sight on the beach was a different story entirely. Whoops of jubilation could be heard a league off as the men of Higo quickly recounted what had happened to anyone who was not close enough to participate in their collective incantation. After returning home to Higo, Suenaga gathered together a cadre of men who had been closest to him and most enthusiastic in joining his storm summoning ritual. As before, he put on a grand display, reenacting his valorous deeds before the daimyo's dais. posing for effect in exaggerated poses, bulging and rolling his eyes wildly to draw his audience into his tale. By the time he was done, many in the town were pleading with him to write down his exploits and perform them again, saying it would surely be considered one of the greatest epics of Higo. Knowing that Suenaga and his retainers had sacrificed a great deal for this journey, but not having the funds to properly compensate him as was befitting of such a celebrated hero, Takezaki decided that since it was the Bakufu who had called the banners of nearly every province in the mainland, it was the Bakufu who should be required to pay the hero's purse. So it was that the next day, Takezaki Gorohyoi Suenaga, Grand Field Marshal General, Gokenin to Shoni Kagesuke, and servant of the Emperor of Japan, was dispatched with an order from his lord to commission a record of his deeds be made in written and painted form, and proliferated ahead of him as he made his way from town to town along the path to Kamakura. Thank you for listening to Part 2 of Inventing Divine Intervention by Alexander Martin. Part 3 is in production and should be available soon. In the meantime, please feel free to enjoy some of the other content we have available on the channel. If you would like to read the rest of this story or any of our other series, click the link in the description below. If you enjoy this or any of our content, please like and subscribe, and don't hesitate to hit the bell to be alerted when more Ominous Harmonies content becomes available.